Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, baby. Hey, baby. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. What's up?
What's going on?
I'm weary, Ted. I'm tired of all of your criticisms. Weary, Ted.
You're weary, Ted.
Weary, Ted.
Got it. Okay. Noted.
Weary, Ted, everyone.
I was waiting for some fun, fake Valentine's Day things to come out on Twitter.
Oh,
I really
that's
wanted
a good
to see
idea.
some of that, but I didn't see any of it today. I saw
Love notes from Glenn.
I wanted it from every angle.
Muriel
I wanted it from
Bowser?
I wanted it from Ted to Virginia to Ted, the NIMBYs to Ted.
Yeah, the boundary stones to
yeah,
everybody.
all of it. But we got none of it.
Kuzma to Winger, get all of it.
Yeah, I wanted more like the stadium stuff. That's
Got it.
That's what I wanted.
Okay, Westmore.
Yeah, a little Westmore.
Westmore to everybody. He loves
DC to the
everybody.
Commanders.
Oh yeah.
Harris to DC.
Yeah.
I wanted a little of that.
All
But,
right.
I didn't get any
Maybe.
of it today.
We still have time.
There were
Who
some good
knows?
ones from the Commanders. There was one with Terry that was really good. There's one with Jahan that said "You're number one to me" or something like that because of his number. There's a couple good ones.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, it's what everyone does at this point.
All right. I'm going to find out later. I'm going to the Maryland game tonight. I'm going to go see Maryland play Iowa. I was invited my annual trip with cousin Larry to
This is
go
what,
see,
courtside, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Get to do that tonight. I'm excited. Doesn't mean much anymore.
Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Yeah.
Your wife mad about that one?
Well, I hope he doesn't mind. I'm going to reveal this right now. So I said, when I said yes, I didn't check the date. One of those
clearly.
situations. It was like that time where I'm like, I got tickets to go see the Wizards play the Raptors.
It was your anniversary, right?
It was her birthday.
Yeah.
And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, don't you want to go? She's like, uh-huh. She's like, look at the date. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah. Whoops.
my bad. So I got invited to this like a week ago. Didn't even think about it. And I'm like, yeah, I'll go.
Yeah.
And then it was like last night. I'm like, hey, I'm going to meet Larry to go to the Maryland game. She goes, on Valentine's Day? And I went, yes. Like, oh, no. Like one of those,
Dude.
like, oh, man. Oh, no.
You're a man. You're over 50. How do you not?
I know.
How do you not do this?
Because these things just fall through the cracks for me. I don't think about these things. And it's not that I don't want to think about these things. I just don't think about these things. I just heard Wednesday night, go see Maryland game. What else could I have going on right now? It's not football season, so whatever. And then so I got that. So my cousin Larry says, hey, meet me for dinner before. And I said, I can't do that part. I need to cook dinner. It's Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And he wrote back, we don't celebrate Valentine's Day. And I went, what? Who doesn't? Who got out of that one? That's what I want to know. How did you get out of that one?
You got to convince your partner that it's a corporate shill thing. And that we can, what I used to do, because I usually used to work with the Caps or whatever, is I used to say, oh, let's do something on the weekend. I would defer for.
Well,
date.
work is an excuse. This isn't work.
Yeah.
She knows I'm just going to watch the game.
Sure.
So I get to get the story tonight. Why are you the one couple that doesn't celebrate Valentine's Day and you're both okay with that? Because that's not my world. My world is you don't ignore this holiday. We don't have to do some grandiose. I don't have to get on a gondola and go down the Potomac River.
No one wants to do that.
Well, who knows? But however, acknowledgement of it is a must.
Right.
And I know that, and I'm okay with that. I'm not complaining. I want to know how he got to the point where it's just like another day and nobody even talks about it. Like, speak nothing of Valentine's Day.
All you got to do is convince someone it's a corporate holiday. Because
I guess.
Because it is.
Well, this has to come from his wife, though. His wife has to be like, I don't want anything to do with
No,
this.
you convince her. That's all you got to do.
I don't know. I don't. I can go buy a card. I'm not upset about it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What are you cooking for dinner then?
Steak.
All right. Okay.
Nice steaks.
Sides?
Sides,
Okay.
steaks.
All right. Okay.
And then, check the clock. I want to make tip. So,
Cool.
get out of there on time.
Go
Anyway.
drinking with my run club. That's what I'm doing. So
Let's see.
happy Valentine's Day to me.
Happy Valentine's Day to all the people that were very upset with Dan Quinn's hiring. Go look at his staff and shut up.
Yeah, right.
Told you, I'll just be patient. Like, give it a second. Everybody got to breathe for a minute. You can't react. Twitter's not real life. You gotta
Commanders, your most beloved team in DC right now.
I don't even think it's close at this point. I mean,
A lot of venom. Well, I don't.
it's kind of always been that
not
way,
the
but
Caps.
like now,
not the Caps. I think we know what's going on with them.
Yeah, I've been
Not
talking about this for 2 years.
Not the venom that the other two franchises are dealing with. I think the Caps and Commanders are still like, you know.
9-44 basketball is not going to get a lot of love.
We're putting the Caps in the nursing home is what's happening right now.
We started doing that 2 years ago. Nobody wanted to listen to me. They need to hire me in the front office to make some tough decisions and tell some people that we are going to put your numbers up in the rafters, but it's time to move on, guys.
Right, exactly.
They didn't want to do that. Loyal Ted doesn't like that so much. Oh, I'm only loyal for as long as I'm loyal. Don't ever call me loyal again. It's not true anymore, now is it? Ask Muriel about that. So anyway, today we got the more staff and more front office news, all kind of flying hot and heavy today, including new assistant GM straight out of Detroit's front office, has been there for a quarter century, Lance Newmark. In the release, you'll notice one thing that will be a nice link to age old. He got his career starting with Bobby Beathard.
Yep.
So that's fun, right? We like that
nice
link.
Little link, yes.
Nice little link. Spent 26
it's a page
years.
out of the Dan book.
Yeah. Now, if I really wanted to poo-poo it, like some people would, because the Lions are hot and heavy these days, been a long time since they've been hot and heavy, but things have turned around here. He's had an elevated role, and now he moves up to assistant GM. So we've got somebody who's been inside what the Lions have been doing, and the Lions have been killing it in the draft the last couple of years.
You could argue why they're so good, because they have so many studs now.
Yes. I mean, I think they got lucky on Aiden Hutchinson because the Jaguars messed up.
Sure.
But fine.
Still had to pick them.
I'm hoping the Bears mess up and we get the right guy at number 2. That's what I'm hoping at this point. But the Jahmyr Gibbs thing, everyone laughed at him. That looks like a hit.
Right.
Amon-Ra St. Brown is their Terry McLaurin. Penei Sewell has turned out to be a stud offensive lineman. They've built maybe the best offensive line in football right now, or at least the top 5 one for sure, which I think is their secret sauce to why they're actually good. We haven't even seen what Jamison Williams can do. He's a luxury pick for them. We don't even know. And then on defense, they have started to fill out a roster with pretty good players, so they're killing it right now. They made that trade for Stafford. It seems to have worked out for both teams. Rams won a Super Bowl. They got a quarterback that they really like, and all of a sudden things are cooking up there. So we get that voice and that mind joining the San Francisco front office. And then what I thought was the surprise today, the poaching of a couple coaches off of San Francisco's staff to join ours, including Anthony Lynn, and not in an elevated role, but as essentially an assistant and not the offensive coordinator. So that to me is a coup. That one's a big hiring to me. Very well liked, very well respected. Obviously, Adam Peters knows him, has head coaching experience, another great voice in the room, running game coordinator. This is all very good because I think people saw the Kingsbury hiring and went, wait a minute, what are we running here? Is it this college-y air raid that doesn't really apply to the NFL? And, well, if we don't have a quarterback who can do it, are we going to throw the ball 80% of the time? Clearly no. Clearly no. Not when you bring in someone like that. So this is good news for Brian Robinson, whoever the other running backs may be. I assume Chris Rodriguez will be back. We'll have to see with Gibson. He's up. His contract's up, so we'll have to see. This screams they'll probably pick a running back in the mid to late rounds to add another running back to the mix. So that's the one that really, I'll get to Newmark in a minute, but the Anthony Lynn one, I went, oh man, they are just killing it, picking up people and picking off people off the staffs. Really well established, well liked, great reputation, and taking on roles that I wouldn't say it's beneath him, but it's certainly below what he could be. So that's really, that was an amazing hiring to me today.
Not to mention, too, you have Dan Quinn, who's been a head coach before. Then he brings on Kingsbury, also a head coach. And then he brings on Lynn, also a head coach. You know how this works. And I always like to say this. In any profession, when you've taken on a larger role, doesn't work out, and you take a step back, or even 2 steps back in this case, it's so much easier to deal with whatever you have to deal with because you kind of just know how to do that stuff. And all of a sudden, you have not only is the head coach former head coach, you have 2 former head coaches that are going to know how to kind of delegate things the right way, know how to push certain buttons, know how to deal with players too. I mean, it's a complete rebuild. Once again, I don't want to use the Ron Rivera word culture here, but I feel like that's an easier way to change the culture when you have all these former head coaches to really show you how it's done and how you're going to kind of reshape this roster and this franchise.
One of the other chief concerns, not a complaint, but concerns with we're going to hire a defensive head coach, and then we're going to get a quarterback. Obviously. I mean, I guess I'm open to hearing all options here because if some crazy deal comes across Adam Peters' plate for the 2nd overall pick, I think he'd be crazy not to at least listen to it because if they're going to get the historic haul that the Bears are talking about for number 1, well, only one team's going to get that. And someone may view Daniels the same way, and we may get that offer, and we may decide to stay or we may decide to go, depending on what they do. So I'm open to the idea of we're not set in stone of anything that we're going to do. The big chief complaint was, here we are, let's assume we're going to get shiny new quarterback, multi-dimensional quarterback, Daniels or Williams, which is what I would expect to occur here in the draft, because that's what's going to be sitting on their plate, whether they move up or get one of the two and just stay and take it. Okay. The big chief concern about hiring the defensive coach was, well, you know how this goes. If an offensive coordinator does really, really well with a quarterback like that, they just get picked off of the team very quickly. And Kingsbury has been a head coach before, so how long is he going to stay? Like if we get Caleb Williams and has a C.J. Stroud season in season 1, all of a sudden Kingsbury is going to be looked at as potentially a head coach. And this Anthony Lynn hiring goes, yep, we're good.
Right.
We're good. So they have set themselves up for what is like hopefully going to be a problem we have in the future. Things are going so well, people rate our staff. That's the hope.
Yep.
Doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's the hope. That's what you want. You want to be in this spot. You want to be where San Francisco is, where they're winning every year and they're winning so much that people just pick off their staff.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And that's where we want to be. We were never in danger of that here under Rivera.
No, never.
Never. So it's not to say the staff. I think Chris Harris was the one that was kind of standing out, and he did get an elevated position from where he was. But everyone else felt kind of safe in their roles.
Yeah, because all it was, because this is the key difference between the two, is Rivera was just taking a staff from Carolina and just carrying it over.
Yes.
Like there were not a lot of changes.
With the exception of Jack. Jack wasn't with him.
Right. But there were a couple other holdovers, especially in here, but he never really made
Even on Jack's staff, though, Sam Mills came from Carolina.
Yep.
There were others that came from Carolina with him.
Right, exactly. And so what I'm getting at here is this is like I don't want to use the word all-star staff, but it's a varied staff. It's from a bunch of different places, which also means it's going to be way more collaborative. There's going to be a lot more arguments between the coaches, which is a good thing. It's a good thing when you have people from different viewpoints of what they want to do. It means that it's going to be much more, like I said, collaborative, I think is the word that I'm going to use here.
So I really feel good about the Anthony Lynn one, mainly because of his background, the levels he's already been at. Most people believe that, when he was with the Chargers, that not unlike what happened, maybe even less with Staley, but more so like he was a little unlucky. He was one of those that was losing all these close games all the time, but he was very well respected. Now he's just with the 49ers. They had the best rush offense. That said, we don't have McCaffrey. I hate when people just carry this over. Well, they did this, so we're going to do that. I love B-Rob. McCaffrey's a Hall of Famer, right? So we don't have that here right now. So I want to be careful with stuff like that. But what I like about the hiring of him mainly, 1, reputation, 2, the players talk about him, 3, experience level, 4, willing to take this role that I don't want to say is beneath him, but is he could ascend higher than what he is, but he took it anyway. And to me, it's the fail-safe of if we kill it with Kingsbury and all of a sudden he's in a hiring cycle again, I think we have a fail-safe of someone they're going to be able to easily turn to and say, everything just keeps rolling here, guys.
Right. Yep.
So I love that part of it. On the defensive side of it, they now went and got the defensive line coach of the 49ers. The defensive line at the 49ers says, and again, in fairness, Nick Bosa is a great player. Hargrave, we saw for years with Philadelphia, is a terrific player. Chase Young even had a moment there with them. Eric Armstead's been outstanding in his career. Is that the talent? Is that the coaching? Is it a little bit of both? Probably a little bit of both.
Right.
But we took somebody and we need the best part of our defense is these 2 defensive tackles. We need them to ascend back to the place they were in 2022 and not in 2023. And hopefully he can kind of implement that as well. But one of the other chief concerns, especially, and it was the one thing that I kind of earmarked when Quinn had his press conference where he said, I'm not going to call the plays. Everyone went, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Right.
That's your special trait. That's what everybody says.
KJ right on. He was he almost lost it with you that he wasn't calling plays.
Everybody knows that's your special trait, that you're very, very, very good at calling the game. Well, the guy that he chose to call the plays is a guy who's been with him for 3 separate stops.
Right.
So his hands are going to be all over the defense too with this particular person. And in the same way I would say about Kingsbury, if our defense kills it and all of a sudden Witt is in the hiring cycles again, they are now hiring people off of these staffs that seem to be ready to potentially ascend up. So on offense, I feel like we're in incredible good hands now. All those concerns about a defensive head coach. We got Kingsbury, Brian Johnson, and Anthony Lynn, all of which either have been, can be, would be offensive coordinators and more
Right.
I feel good about it, right? I feel good about it. To your point, and I do think this is, I don't know, concern's the right word. I love the eclectic thinking. I love the accumulation of talent, right? They all are from different places.
Yes.
So there is this part of they do need to work together,
Correct.
and we'll see how that all goes. And again, but I like this compilation of this talent that they've acquired. It does reinforce this idea that people keep saying this, like, this is a place people want to be. Clearly it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Brian Johnson took a lateral move, right, to come over, probably had other opportunities, was in the hiring cycle at least as head coaching candidate. And he took this job not as the coordinator. He had Anthony Lynn, who took a lateral move to come over here. It's hard not to be really excited about what they're building, and hopefully it'll all come together. And then the next thing's going to be with hiring Lance Newmark with Adam Peters. They're the ones on the clock here. The roster needs a lot of help.
Yes,
a lot.
that's right.
And so now we've got somebody who's been killing it in the draft from San Francisco and somebody who's been killing it in the draft from Detroit in recent years working together. So it all reads, we're getting the right minds in the room. Let's see what we do with it. And this year is just an enormous jumping off point between cap room, the draft equity that they have, and the returning players, because some of them are all Pro Bowl caliber players like Allen and Payne and Terry and potentially Jahan. I think Jahan could be that for them if utilized correctly. Then I think they're on a good jumping off point. But I'm not blinded to the fact that they don't have the roster that the Lions or 49ers have. And I think they know that too. And if they were being honest with you, they'll tell you that. So as excited as I am, I need to see what the roster looks like. What can they do literally in one offseason to make it better? And then how are we set up moving forward? It starts with the quarterback, and it moves down to all of these other spots that are so obvious voids. Offensive line, rush end, potentially linebacker. I'm going to be optimistic about Jamin with a new set of coaches around him, maybe. Corner,
yeah.
I'll be optimistic about Forbes. With a new set of coaches, maybe there's a better ascension here. What do we do with Cam Curl? Are the safeties in good shape anyway, whether he stays or goes with Forrest and Quan and all that stuff coming back? So I know there's holes, and big ones, especially on the rush end and offensive line. You can't win if you can't win the line of scrimmage. So I'm aware that they've got a lot of work to do, but now they're officially on the clock. But steps one, even with the landing of Quinn not hitting all the high notes for everybody, if you don't like the staff that's been built, then you're never going to come around to anything, because I do.
Right.
And then now we got to see what the front office does to build out a roster, because they're a ways away from putting a team out there that is in the NFC Championship like those other two teams were.
What's also going to happen here, too, what I like about both of them, especially the 49ers, is this isn't kind of like hiring someone from a front office, I'd say 15, 20 years ago, when it would be like let's say, just for example, like Debo. Let's say he would become a free agent. That would be the classic early 2000s. They hand Debo a bunch of money and then have him come over here, right? Peters and the guy from the Lions, Newmark. Both of them are of the more modern thinking of, you don't overpay for the guys that you know about. It's all about value on your roster. And that's what the 49ers have now been for 5, 6, 7 years, where it's like, we want a solid roster, but we are not overpaying for anybody, because that's how you win in the NFL now, is you constantly have a churning out of talent. And then when you pay a couple of the guys, but you don't pay all of them, that's where I am actually most hopeful here, is this isn't going to be like an old Dan operation where we sign every former Lion and every former 49er here, no matter how good or bad they were. That it's going to be a smart way to put the roster together. That's why, too, I think everyone needs to kind of stay calm of, if they don't go crazy in free agency, that's okay. They don't want to screw up the cap. They don't want to screw up the roster. I think everyone just needs to, this is going to be a longer, not a long process, but a consistent, slower burn, I think is what I would call it.
I mean, I think you could turn things around pretty quickly in the NFL.
I agree with that, but I'm
it's
just
going to start with the quarterback,
right.
Who we select, and they come in here, and are they on a fast track like Stroud? If that's the case, then we're going to be in really good shape pretty quickly, and then it'll come down to, what does the rest of the roster look like?
Yeah.
If the quarterback takes a while to develop, well, then we're going to be stuck with that.
Right.
I mean, that's the key to all of it. The other part that I really like, and this is unusual, actually, is that typically when people get hired, they just bring their people.
That's right. Yeah.
That's not what's happening here.
Correct. Yeah.
At all.
That's what I'm getting at with that.
It's not what's happening here. Like the statement from Peters in the release from Newmark today was, I've just really respected him for years and years. He's never worked with him before.
Yeah.
He's just, I really respect him, and we want to get him in here because I think we are aligned in thinking in that way. In the same way that Quinn said, I've never worked with Cliff Kingsbury before, but I knew what I was dealing with when I worked against him. I know what kind of reputation he has, and that's why I want him here. None of them worked with Brian Johnson before, and they know what the reputation is working with a young quarterback. Obviously, like, it's all earmarked to we're taking a quarterback here. Like, there's no way around it. But the people that they're hiring, Kingsbury, Johnson, like, obviously, and then as they're working with this person to develop him, here's Anthony Lynn, who's going to come in here and hopefully stabilize portions of the offense that don't deal with all of these kind of different discrepancies that are going on. I like that too. Will it all work? Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of minds that come into the room that haven't worked together, so we don't really know. But I like the open-mindedness of, I'm not just bringing my guys with me. I'm going to bring in people that we respect and think that can help us build to where they were. And I like that. I mean, this falls in line with the advisory committee when people were kind of making fun of Bob Myers, Rick Spielman, Magic Johnson. These guys are winners.
Right.
Like, yeah, you never worked with any of them, but they know what a winning organization looks like. Why wouldn't you pick their brains? Why wouldn't you ask their opinions on all these things? And here's Adam Peters, who's given this shot for the first time. He said he wanted this one. Others wanted him. Said he wanted this one. And his first major hiring in the front office is somebody he's never worked with before, who he just respects because what he's doing somewhere else has worked. And I like this. Well, it's open-mindedness. It's not closed-minded. It's not thinking you have all the answers when you walk in. That's what I loved about Quinn saying, my first experience, I learned a lot of lessons about myself, about what I want to do, where lane I need to be in, how I need to work. And everyone seems to be coming in here with the same mindset about it, which I love. I don't think there's been alignment here for a very long time, and it feels like that's what they're going to try to foster and grow, and hopefully it'll work out that way. All's well. When you're 2-6, though, everybody might change. Sure. And like, hopefully that's not the case with them. But right now, we're winning the offseason, guys. Like, I think we're winning the offseason here a little bit.
I think the more interesting thing is actually was the announcement today or reports that both Martin Mayhew and Marty Herney are both staying on
By the way,
board.
I'm not surprised by either one of those.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, no. What I'm getting, I didn't really know, to be completely honest.
I think I had said this earlier. I said, don't think that they're changing.
Right.
Like, the new ownership group was leaning on both of them. I was saying this back in November, December, and I'm like, don't be surprised. Like, whatever they do, they're not going to be the head of the front office, clearly, but don't be surprised if in the end that they're carryovers here.
Right, and I think it's also, this all just going back of, like, Ron Rivera was just doing so much, I mean, throughout his whole entire tenure here, but even those guys, it seems like even they're like, oh, we have a defined role now. You know, like, they kind of know what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. It's not like, oh, just do whatever Ron can't do or what he needs you to take care of today. It seems like with Peters coming in, actually saying, "Oh yeah, you guys actually do know what you're doing, but this is going to be your role now from here on out." I think it's Herney. I think it's Herney's the one that's going to be like a special advisor.
They're
now.
calling him an executive advisor.
Okay.
Marty Herney has, to my understanding, gotten a pretty good relationship with the ownership group through the process and helping them understand where they were, the decisions they made, and moving forward. And they trust his opinion. He's been around forever.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
so whatever his role is, whatever his role is,
he didn't talk more. But I understand
it's not like him.
Right. Yeah.
No,
exactly.
He just doesn't do that.
Yeah.
This is not his personality. With Martin Mayhew, all along, I didn't know what his job was.
Right.
He had a title of general manager, but there was always a large question of what exactly does he do.
He'd get wheeled
here?
out there before the draft at the end of the season, and you're like, okay.
Well, I mean, like, I wasn't surprised when I heard agents say things like, we don't know who to call. Is it Ron? Is it Martin?
Right.
Is it Marty? We're not even really sure. Like, who do you deal with? And so Martin is going to have a defined role now, whatever that may be. I don't know if that's going to be dealing with contracts or dealing with scouting or whatever it may be. He's going to have a defined role in all of this now, which is all good, too. So, all good, people. All good. The shine is back over there at Old Ashburn.
I'm still going to do that to you throughout the year. Your boy Cliffy.
See what happens. They're having a press conference tomorrow, by the way, which I think is at 2:30.
Okay.
Right? So maybe we'll play some of it during the show. I think we probably should.
Going early, so.
Yeah. We'll probably play that live, I would think. Yeah,
we
we'll probably play that live. I don't know if it'll be an hour like Dan Quinn's, but we'll see.
Yep.
Never know. All right, let me take a quick break. I do want to get to what was the bombshell today, which was nearly LeBron James went to the Warriors. Bram Weinstein Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, in the least surprising thing to happen near the NBA trade deadline, LeBron James was in discussions to be moved. I don't know if it was to where he wanted to go, which was so passively aggressively New York.
Right.
Obviously. Like passive aggressively. He was tweeting things with the Statue of Liberty. The Lakers happened to be playing in New York, which could be read however you want to read it. All of a sudden, Chris Paul, power broker, his agent, is meeting with Leon Rose, and they're burying the hatchet over whatever it is. priming for what we know this is, which is not just can we get big-time free agents to sign with the Knicks, which hasn't happened in a long time, but probably more importantly, doesn't LeBron want to end his career here and win a championship here because nobody's done it here in a very long time, and it would be very important.
Well, they also have a good roster now. Not a great roster, but a very solid roster that you can insert somebody like him, and all of a sudden you're taking over the top in the Eastern Conference.
It has turned out that the Mavericks screwed up big on Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, massively,
Massively screwed up there.
Right.
Mark Cuban said something to the effect of, Jalen Brunson's dad got in the way or something. Something stupid. But the reality is, had they maxed him, which clearly they should have, right? Clearly they should have.
Yep.
He would still be there, but they didn't, and they didn't value him that way. And he is the real reason why the Knicks are actually really good right now. They have a pretty good team, but he's really, really, really good.
That's right. Yes.
And LeBron, of course, wants to just win, and he likes to be the center of attention. And then they played in New York, and then he put a towel that said New York Knicks, and he positioned it so you could read the words over his shoulders. It was beyond passive-aggressive, but it really read like that's where he wants to go, but it's more the message of I'm very open to being moved. And then Woj put out the bombshell last night that actually the Warriors and the Lakers were talking.
Right.
And, for the Warriors, this is kind of last gasp of what they have. Clay is not the same player that he was anymore. There's been a lot about that this year. Draymond's been Draymond, in a very unusual way, obviously, this year. Steph is still Steph, but it's getting old. And if they're going to put it together, they got to get one more guy again to lead them over the top. And so I guess there were, as Woj put it, discussions at the ownership level between the two organizations to make a deal get done. And considering how passive-aggressive LeBron is talking about leaving, I'm actually semi-surprised the Lakers didn't go through with it and move him. And I'm assuming, he probably has no trade clause and all that stuff. Yep. He's LeBron James. He would have had to say that he wanted to go there. That also, in the olden days, trading somebody to a Western Conference rival would have been like kind of a non-starter. But I think we're in a new era now where people don't look at it that way. And frankly, I feel like that this might have, should have, would have, could have happened. And I'm not sure why it didn't. I wonder what was in return for that.
I think
you're not trading Curry. So what's going back to them actually?
Right. Yeah, I don't know what's going back. I also think, both of those teams are probably weary of trading any legitimate assets back to the Lakers, because LeBron only has a player option next year. So both of those teams are probably thinking long term, we get LeBron, but we may only have him for a year if he just decides he doesn't like it here, which wouldn't be shocking for LeBron either. If he was like, I really can't win here, I'm going to go sign another max deal somewhere else. Like, he's going to be 40 next year, but he's only got a player option next season. So
he's leaving.
Right, of course. And so I think that's why both the Warriors and the Knicks were kind of like, we're not going to give you an asset when we can get you in the offseason. Like, if you really want to come here, we'll get you, because you're not going to opt in to play for the Lakers again, most likely.
I think in the Warriors case, I would look at it and go, okay, who's the best teams in the West right now? Minnesota's never really won anything. Oklahoma City is very young, inexperienced. The Clippers, who older team and, might be savvy enough to pull this off if they stay healthy.
Second or third right now.
Right.
I think they're third.
Dallas, who's pretty good. The Kings, who are pretty good, were kind of there last year but aren't replicating what they did a year ago. If I'm the Warriors, I go, if you come here, we might turn it on for half a season and win it. And I think you know that.
Sure.
And so I'm a little surprised. Here's how Woj posed it. He said, Jeannie Buss told Joe Lacob, the two owners, that the Lakers had no desire to trade him, but they would seek the answer of his state of mind from his agent and talk to Rich Paul. As an owner, Buss has operated with the mindset that she wants her star players content with the franchise, and that instructed her thinking on referring Warriors leadership to the representation. If the Lakers ever wanted a temperature check on James' commitment, here was his chance. In the end, the answer was returned resoundingly on the eve of the deadline. Paul told Lacob and Warriors GM Mike Dunleavy that James had no interest in a trade and wanted to remain a Laker. Okay. In the end, it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So you need to say that.
Yep.
the fact that it was even discussed tells me he's open to ideas. It probably would have just been, well, I don't know, maybe the Warriors said, we'll trade for you, but we want to get an extension on you. Maybe that's what it was.
I actually think, no, hearing that it was his call, he didn't want to do what like KD did, where you go to a franchise and you're not only the second fiddle, you're the third fiddle behind those two guys.
Yes. Dunleavy was the second team executive called to Pelinka on a possible James trade. Apparently, Daryl Morey tried to get him to come to Philadelphia too, which I'm not surprised.
Yep.
And in that case, I would wonder, is there a better return? But I mean, are they seriously going to give the Lakers Maxey? Not giving him Embiid.
Right.
So what are they returning?
It's the same thing. I think LeBron's not going to a place where he's the second or third guy. Because the franchises that you just named.
So that's why he wants New York. Because,
correct.
And this is like the not that it's a worry because they might be able to win with him, but like he blots out the sun.
Correct.
So he becomes the number one.
But if you're him,
undoubtedly, you go up and play with Curry. Well,
that's what I said.
Curry's a bigger deal there.
No, he's not second in. He's not even second in Golden State. He's third. Thompson's bigger than him. Franchise-wise?
I think from a playing time perspective
I'm not talking about that.
Sure, franchise-wise, but Thompson comes off the bench at that point.
No, I know, but I'm just saying LeBron's not going somewhere where he's second or even third fiddle to the fans there. Yeah. He wants to go somewhere because if he's like, if I'm making another stop in this league to another franchise, I'm the guy wherever I go. So that's what it was with both franchises because he goes to Philly. Philly fans are too savvy for that. Philly fans, you've been through it before, where they're going to go, all right, we like you, LeBron, but Embiid is our guy. So he's not going somewhere where he's not definitively the number one guy.
Morey apparently is not afraid to make the call. I guess Rob Pelinka responded to Morey, according to this report, saying, well, if Joel Embiid is available, we'll trade you LeBron James,
right,
which of course he isn't. He said that ended the call. And they said Morey, he went on to say that Morey has already called the Suns too and said, is Durant available now? And was told Durant's not available.
Yep, right.
Because the reality is the Booker-Beal Suns aren't winning anything, but the Durant-Booker-Beal Suns might.
And they turned it around fast. Like they were shuffling along for a month and a half there. And then when all three got healthy, none
of them had played together.
Yeah, now they're crushing people.
Of course. Yeah. Well, that's the expectation. So, and if I'm the Warriors, I'm looking at this going, what chance do we really have, even if we sneak in, unless we have one more uber star? And I don't know, like if LeBron is in the business of chasing places to go to get rings to end his career, which sounds like he is because he's passive-aggressively already kind of doing that and seems to like the idea of New York.
Right.
I don't know. He did it in Cleveland. So is that what it is? He's looking at New York going, I think I can win there, and doing it there would matter.
Well, he would also be, I think, the first player to win with 4 different franchises.
Right, well, that'd be Golden State too.
Right.
Or Philadelphia too.
No, but same thing. Once again, he's not going to be the spotlight on those other teams, though. He's not going to be the number one guy.
I think he shares the spotlight in Philadelphia.
No, he doesn't.
Sure.
Those fans are too smart.
Yeah, but nationally.
Sure, nationally, but those fans are going to get on him. They're going to go, Embiid's our guy. You're not our guy.
The Stephen A's opening segment is about LeBron's numbers, too.
Sure, but I'm just saying, I think he's smart enough to know, I go to Philly. The Philly fans, yes, they'll love me, but Embiid is the number one guy for those fans.
Yeah.
And where New York, he's bigger than all those guys. Brunson's awesome, but LeBron does. Yeah, right. LeBron,
he's not an all-time player.
Correct. Yeah,
right,
it's not like they drafted and developed Brunson.
Right. Steph Curry is a first-ballot Hall of Famer, maybe the greatest shooter of all time, one of the biggest winners of all time. Embiid is an MVP. Probably would be again if it wasn't for missing time and all that stuff. At this point, going to Philadelphia, knowing what they know about Embiid now, it'd be a waste of time because he's hurt. So him going there would put him in no better position than he is right now. He'd have to wait out Embiid coming back, then they'd have to get it together.
It's the same thing. He watched it. He's smart. He watched what happened with Durant. Durant was probably the actual best overall player on Golden State, but he was still like the 4th most liked player on the franchise.
People got mad at him too for going there because they're like, it's a ready-made team. And I was like, are people going to come at LeBron in the same way that they went at Durant, even though Golden State's not the same team that they were when Durant went there?
Right.
Those guys were all in their prime at the time when Durant went there. This is not the case now. This is a last gasp. Let's try to squeeze out a championship or two with this group before they all get too old.
Right. Exactly.
This is what they're looking at.
Right.
There is a part of me that goes, maybe he should have just done it and gone there because he's going to be free agent either way. As long as they're not asking you to sign an extension, just go finish it out there. You're not winning with the Lakers this year, clearly. I thought for sure things would go differently, but they haven't. It's not changing. The deadline's passed. They can't get any better than they are.
If the standings were better, I think he would have. But they're only, I think the Lakers are in 9th and the Warriors are right behind them. So, like, I think if this
so
is not
he's signing with the Knicks is what's happening.
Probably, most likely.
In the offseason.
Or he's
signing with the Knicks.
You mean he's not going to go where Bronny goes?
Tell the Knicks to draft him and we'll see what they do. But it's like in the end, he wants to chase whatever his legacy is. And I think he's the first one. I've been waiting for someone to do this. I think people said this about Jordan forever. They were like, he's going to end up going to New York at the end because it means so much to win in New York and nobody had done it in a long time. Right. Instead, he came here. Let's see what LeBron does, and maybe he looks at it that way. And he goes, if I go there and I win there, that's a way to end my legacy. 4 different teams, and you do it in a place that hadn't won since the 70s. It's a landmark NBA franchise that matters, even though they haven't won in forever.
The other one, I think, wasn't it? Let's see. Hold on here. I just want to get the contract out. Yeah. Okay, he has a year left. Donovan Mitchell's also already been like thrown out there that he's probably going to get traded over the summer too, because he'll be on his last deal.
Well, I think if they don't get Bron, they're going to get Donovan Mitchell.
Why not both? You don't have to give anything up for LeBron.
Correct.
You can sign him as a free agent.
That's right.
So they're going to go all in. Say to Donovan Mitchell, we wanted you in the first place.
Yep.
You got a year left on your deal, and
they get the 2 of them with Brunson. They're going to be a dominant force.
That's what I think is going to happen
for a couple of years.
And yes. Cleveland is kind of just.
I'm going to talk to my friend who has Knicks tickets and go, how do I buy in on that? Because the secondary market resale on those are going to be just outrageous.
And like Cleveland has basically just not let it be known, but said, we kind of know we're not going to get you on another deal here. So they know they kind of have to trade him to get a bunch of assets back for the final year there with him, which I don't blame them for. Like, Cleveland's the same as us. When they have a stud like that and they know they're not going to extend him or he doesn't want to stay there, you do get whatever assets you can there. So I'm going to guess. I guess that's our offseason prediction. I think Donovan Mitchell and LeBron go to the Knicks and they become the super team.
The super team.
Yeah.
The other one that came out, and I'm not sure that this one's totally true because it's not out of Woj's mouth or Shams or someone like that, but it's being reported by some that the Wizards were offered 2 first-round picks for Kuzma from Dallas.
Okay.
And that kind of lines up. I mean, they gave up a first for Gafford.
Right.
So I don't know
though?
that. I'm sure they're low. I mean, like it's not that I don't believe it, but I don't know it for sure. But I don't not believe that. It sounds about right. And if that is the case, I would like to hear from Winger. If that was the case, why was he so lukewarm on that? You can't do better than that.
Right.
So why was he so lukewarm on that for Kuzma? Because when he said it was 1 first and he said, I'll leave it up to you, and Kuzma said he wanted to stay, okay, I'll hear that out. A low first-round pick for Kyle Kuzma. All right. 2 of them? All right.
Well, it could have been, if they were already talking to the Mavericks about Gafford, was it 2 first-round picks for Gafford and Kuzma? Because I feel like that's almost probably what it was.
Maybe
that's what it sounds like it would be.
Maybe what it was.
If you were packaging them
and
both.
The first-round pick for Gafford is a no-brainer.
Yes.
To me.
And I think, was it just they were throwing in 1 more for Kuzma? I want to know the details of that. Because
so do I.
There's no way the Mavs were sending them 3 first-round picks for the 2 of them.
Correct.
Right? So,
well, I
like,
mean,
that's
who
a
knows?
lot.
Maybe they went for Kuzma. The Wizards turned it down. They said, well, what about Gafford? That's how it kind of reads, but maybe it was, we want both of them.
Yeah.
We'll give you 2 first-round picks.
And like maybe,
and then in that case, okay.
Or that extra first was from 2031 or some, some ridiculous one where Winger's going, I can't take that on.
That's right.
I think that's probably what
I agree. All right, let me take a quick break. We'll review the Caps loss next. Bram watches the show. ESPN 630 Sports Capital. I'm just seeing the news from Kansas City, which is frightening. Apparently, there was a shooting at the parade today honoring the Chiefs and their Super Bowl championship. 9 people are hurt. 1 is dead. And 2 armed people have been detained by Kansas City police. So that's all I see going on at this point. That's at least out at this point. So if we hear anything more, it's terrible what happened there today. All right, a couple of quick things here locally. And then at the top of the hour, I really want to get into, which we haven't talked about yet because there's been so much going on, the quote-unquote historic haul that the Bears want to get into the number 1 pick, which we'll have to try to decipher whether I believe them or not for all of that, because the fact that they're just pushing it out there so much that they're open to trading makes you wonder, why are they so open to trading it? Right? Why are they so, if they think this guy's it, why are they opening the door for that? So we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's start with the Capitals, who lost to Colorado, got down, came back. Score looks worse than it is. They gave up 2 empty net goals at the end of the game. So it looks worse than it is. All right, what do you think? What happened? Played a better team, obviously, last night.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Colorado is head and shoulders not only just better, but like so much faster than them. It got off to an ugly start. I don't know if you saw. Colorado scored 2 goals in the first 5 minutes, and it felt like this one was going to go off the rails a little bit. The Caps ended up scoring 2, tying things up heading into the second period. And then Colorado just, does what they do, and they score 2 goals and went up 4-3 or 4-2. And then Ovechkin ends up scoring in the third, getting another goal for him, which is great, by the way. Like, the fact that he seems to be heating back up to a point of being the franchise guy is great to see, and gets them back within 1. It ends up being 4-3. This is just one of those games where, the Caps couldn't make any mistakes. They did. The second they made mistakes, the Avalanche scored on the power play. Lindgren actually didn't even really give up too many bad goals last night. A lot of them, there was one where I think one of the first 2, he was screened by 3 guys, like all skating around him at the same time, and he just missed it. Another one was a ridiculous pass that went through someone's legs, and it goes in the back of the net. Colorado's just a better team. This one, I'm like, it's hard to be mad at this one because Colorado's just so much better. The one that was interesting, though, was Spencer Carberry made it a point yesterday in morning skate to put Tom Wilson on the 4th line. I mentioned to you before we got off the air yesterday. He put Tom Wilson on the 4th line so they could match the 4th line against Nathan McKinnon, because McKinnon scored 4 goals last time around. That actually worked. Like, they shut McKinnon down pretty well. It was everyone else, though, that scored the goals, essentially. They scored in the power play. But, we're just at a point now. That was one of the harder games of this stretch. Now they have to really start winning some games because they play against some easier opponents. They don't play again until Saturday. They have another couple days off here. So hopefully they put it together. They're in Montreal on Saturday. Then they play the Devils, which that one's like a must-win. But they've got to win a lot of games. And the more unfortunate part here is there's so many teams ahead of them. There's not going to be a night where they all lose. They're all playing each other. Like, people are going to start getting points. They need to go on a run here.
Leapfrogging the amount of teams they have to leapfrog seems unlikely unless they go on a crazy heater.
Right.
And win 80% of their games down the stretch.
Pretty much.
And then that'll just barely get them in.
Yeah, right. And even Charlie Lindgren after the game last night was finally showing a little bit of frustration of, like, they need to he literally said, we need to start winning. There's no more excuses. We're kind of at the point now. And all I know is I'm looking at the calendar and it's February 14th, and I feel like they were having the same exact conversation a year ago at this point.
That's what hurt the other day when they played Vancouver and they were better than them and they should have won and had a turnover and they left a point.
Right.
It's only 1 point, but they lost a point off of a bad turn. Who knows? They might have lost in the shootout anyway.
Correct.
But who knows? But these are they can't afford it.
Yeah, correct.
They just can't afford it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they're good enough to go on a heater. That's the problem.
Right, exactly. I will say this off the ice stuff last night, and I have known this because I follow it and I know what's going on with the team a little bit. But Bailey Johnson from the Post last night, she even said, I'm hesitant to report this stuff because it's at every game. But for the 5th game in a row, the Golden Knights were scouting a Capitals game, home or away. And they had 3 scouts there last night. So watch out for whatever the trade deadline deal is going to be, that they'll probably make some kind of deal with Vegas if that involves Nick Dowd, or if you remember, Max Pacioretty was a big part of their team when they went on the Cup run.
Too, I heard, is up potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying, I might need to go look into the.
I don't mind if they trade Pacioretty or Edmonton.
No, of course not. The same thing with Dowd. Dowd's going to be a free agent, and he's their best face-off man. There might be their best overall center on the roster, to be completely honest. But what I would say is, I might need to go look at who the best prospects for the Golden Knights are, just because it seems like that's the team that they're going to dance with. And this happened last year where Boston started to show up to a lot of their games. And what happened? They not only traded for Hathaway, they traded for Orlov too and got that first-round pick back for Rasmus Sandin. So that's starting to happen too, where the Vultures are starting to circle a little bit and see where, they can pick apart the parts a little bit.
Yeah.
I still stand by this as well, and people don't like to hear it, but I still think if Charlie Lindgren's playing really well down the stretch, if there is a desperate team that wants a goaltender, I think you move him for some assets, even if it's detrimental.
I don't disagree with that.
He has a year left on his contract, too. You should actually get a lot back for him because there are teams that really need goaltenders right now. If he's still playing really well, I think you need to move him for somebody's top prospect and or a pick or something like that.
Yeah.
No one wants to have that discussion, but I'm having that discussion, so...
The other thing that happened here was, and this is prime Livero. Oh man, sometimes I feel like he's, he takes a hatchet to everybody. That's kind of his, that's his special trait.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like it's misguided, or sometimes it's just a little much. But in the case of the one he wrote in the Times about the Nationals, it's on point for me. I've been talking about this for a while, and he just basically was like, "What are you guys doing?"
Yep. Right.
And the answer is nothing. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm going to hit you over the head with a sledgehammer, because we're in whatever year 3 of this rebuild, and you are literally doing nothing to make this team better. And don't try to pretend that you are, because you aren't. And you don't have the excuse of being a small market. I've gone back to this a lot. Like, who are we now? We're not acting like we're the market size that we are.
Right.
And that's the ownership not spending any money. And they can lean back on, well, when the time is right, we'll do that. And in the past, they've done that. But, past success does not predict future rewards. And I don't know that they're going to, and they've shown no sign of doing it. And if you actually go look at their payroll right now, yes, they have 2 albatrossy-type contracts. One is going to end after this year, Patrick Corbin. And then I guess maybe we'll figure out Strasburg this year or not. He's obviously never pitching again. But either way, if you actually, even if you combine those two, who else is getting paid on this team?
Right.
Because they don't have a payroll that even comes close to mimicking a big market team. So I don't know. You can hide behind those contracts, but I don't think it's a fair thing to hide behind. And Livero basically was like, you can't.
Well,
you're not putting a team out here. You're not spending any money. You're not trying to acquire anybody. And, one of my chief complaints of the trades that occurred a couple of years ago were, okay, who'd you get back? Because I don't see all-stars.
Yeah, right.
That's the part you don't know, and you have to let play out, and I can judge you on it by the returns. But you're also not doing anything to bolster the roster around them, whether they were ahead of schedule or not. And I'm with Livero on this. What are you guys doing?
Well, it's also he had some quotes too, because Rizzo and Lerner talked at there's a season ticket holder event now. They don't even do their original Nats Fest, which they used to be a really big event at the stadium, but they did a season ticket holder event. And the quote from Mike Rizzo was, "Oh, I've always had the resources. I can do what I want." But then Lerner's quote was, "Yeah, Mike just needs to come to me whenever he wants to spend some money. We all know that we go for it, essentially." And Livero's takeaway from that was, what is it? Because you're not spending any money. And
is he not coming to you? Why would he not come to you? That doesn't even make any sense.
Right.
Why would the GM say, I think we're fine, when everybody knows you're not fine?
Correct.
You can't compete to make the playoffs, especially in a division that spends the kind of money that those teams are spending.
And Livero's argument, too, was I think the Nats won 71 games last year, something like that, when 84 got you into the wild card. So actually buying 10 more wins isn't the most crazy thing in the world. You add a bat or two and a starting pitcher, and all of a sudden,
and one of these young guys comes up this year and happens to be really good. Everything you think it's.
And Livero's actual argument here too, which I actually really believe in, is he's not even saying you got to make the playoffs. Be competitive in September. So when all of these guys are getting those competitive juices flowing in September, and they're in a wild card race, and even if they don't make it, it makes them hungry and ready to go for the following season. This is how it works in baseball now. You give them the first taste, and then you start to go for it. They're not even doing that. And my argument, too, is Mike Rizzo's best moves when they rebuilt the team the first time around was they would sign guys to 1- and 2-year contracts, and then when they were studs, they would flip them at the deadline for guys. One of the best trades he ever made was flipping Matt Capps' expiring contract, an all-star reliever, for Wilson Ramos, who became their starting catcher for 5, 6, 7 years, whatever that timeline was. They're not even signing guys for 1- and 2-year deals. They're not signing anybody, period. They're signing Joey Gallo, who hits 197. I don't know what you're going to do with that. So it's also a dangerous game to do right now. Most Nats fans were Orioles fans before, and look at what they're doing up the road. You're literally turning them to another ulterior product that honestly is just as easy to get to and easy to go to. So
I've been harping on this for a while. With the returns that they got in the Soto, Turner, Scherzer deals, I don't see it. I don't see the makings of what is going to be a turnaround team, right? They have some nice parts. None of them are all-stars.
Right.
And so that's on Rizzo and them for making these trades and not getting a return that gives them the type of players that replace that level, something close to that level of production. No one's going to be Soto, and probably no one's going to be Turner, but something close to it. Well, I'm not seeing any of that. And then at the same time, this team's spending no money on anybody.
Yes.
So Joey Gallo's your one move?
Right.
Excite me, guys.
He even said today that he doesn't envision
Tickle me a little bit. You're not even doing that.
He was even saying today that they don't envision signing another major league contract. And everybody's kind of like, great, because there's a lot of those guys actually out there still that you can probably pick up.
They're going to be the worst team in the division, and if they're lucky, they're the 4th team in the division.
Right.
That's if one of those other teams flames out in a way that you can't even expect them flaming out.
Pretty much that ain't going to happen. I mean, the Mets maybe, because the Mets are quote-unquote hitting the reset. But even then, it's
then, maybe.
right,
maybe. All right, we'll do the historic haul next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630 at Sports Capital. 49ers have released their defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks, after 1 year. So they keep changing that every year, sometimes because they're being poached. Robert Saleh, DeMeco Ryans, and in this case, The 49ers defense did kind of go sideways late in the season. I don't think they were bad against the Chiefs, and Mahomes makes everybody look bad in crunch time.
Of course, yeah.
But that was an issue in the playoffs. One of the reasons why I thought the Lions were going to beat them is I didn't think that their defense, especially their defensive line, was playing good enough. And honestly, if the Lions didn't act like crazy pantses, I think they might have won anyway.
Yeah,
would have been a different Super Bowl. I don't know that would have been any different of an outcome, but would have been a different Super Bowl. So they're making a change there, and now late to the party to make that change to go out and go get a defensive coordinator after the cycle is like this.
One of the damning stats for the Niners was how many more points they were giving up in the playoffs comparatively to the regular season.
Yeah, I didn't like the way they were playing. That's why I didn't think they were going to get there. I thought I knew that Green Bay game was going to be close after the way they played in Dallas, and then I was like, I picked the Lions to beat them. I'm like, I don't think their defense is playing good enough, but Crazy Dan did crazy things and left him in a spot, and Purdy was great, in that game, in that comeback.
I mean, the first guy that comes to mind is, do they want to go after Vrabel?
Ron, baby.
Ron. They're not doing Ron. I think Vrabel is the one you go after. You say, hey, man, you want to make a one-year run here? We've got a really good offense. We need you to just keep things together.
Chiefs very wisely signed Spagnuolo to a 3-year deal,
contract,
too. Yeah. I bet you they were worried.
Yeah, of course. They probably also said to him, "You really like it here. What's gonna keep you comfortable, and why do you what's it gonna take for you to not take those interviews?" And he probably gave him a number, and they said, "Great."
Maybe Rex Ryan will go back on TV today and explain how he'd like to be the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. See if he does that today.
That one's gonna happen.
All right, let's talk about the thing that's been haven't talked a lot about because we have so much else going on, which is, and now that we're heading towards the draft and what will be the next big decision. Adam Peters is filling out the front office. He just hired Lance Newmark out of the Lions front office, had been there for a quarter century, so he's the new assistant GM. The coaching staff is being filled out. Free agency will be up next. I will be interested to see over the next 3 weeks, now that all this is kind of coming together. There are a lot of free agents on this roster right now. There's some work that needs to be done before we get to free agency.
Yep.
Who are they going to try to retain? Cam Curl, Antonio Gibson, Logan Thomas, Kendall Fuller. A lot of names that they have to really think about. What are they going to do with Charles Leno? There's a pretty significant cap savings if they were to move on from him. He's got 1 year left at about $15 million. I got a hard time believing he's going to get that. They get to save about $8 to $9 million if they release him, but then they don't have a left tackle and they don't have a backup at that position either. I mean, they're not going to go into the season, I don't think, with thinking Cornelius Lucas is their starting left tackle. So they've got a lot of decisions to make, but there's moves that need to be made, I think, over the next few weeks with the roster. And then, specifically with who you're bringing back and who's going to be a cap cut for you. So I think we got to think about that, and we'll see what happens there. But then we'll get to prime season, which is what are we doing with the number 1 or 2 overall pick? Now, question one is, and I'm going to get this out of the way because I don't think they should do this, but I've seen a lot of people put out there, should they try to get Kirk Cousins to come back? And I really just don't think that that's the move here.
Right.
Not at this state, not where they are. I don't think the roster's ready to necessarily win. And you're going to eat up all of the cap room, giving him $45 to $50 million a year.
That's right.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense to me. So I don't think that that's happening. And he's the only primary, outside of Baker Mayfield, same thing. I'm not giving him $40 million to come in here. So let's assume that that's off the table for them and that they're not in the market to try to find their Geno Smith or sign Mitch Trubisky on a cheap deal and just plug them in. I don't think they're going to do that. So this now brings us to the draft. And the Bears have the number 1 pick. And this is what Ian Rappaport said over the weekend and has been reiterating over the last few days. He said, and he wrote this for NFL.com, if someone's going to pry the number 1 overall selection away from the Bears, they're going to have to pay and pay a lot. Chicago needs a historic haul of draft picks and overall compensation to move the first pick of the draft. Sources say, in the words of one source, it would have to, quote, be crazy. It indicates that the Bears, who received the pick in the Mammoth trade last offseason with the Panthers, are more likely than not to make the pick and land their new franchise quarterback, Caleb Williams, who we expect to be the number 1 pick. Daniel Jeremiah, among others, are labeling him the number 1 pick. There's now been some argument in the draft circles that maybe Jaden Daniels is the guy. Yep. Some people would argue maybe Drake May is the more, I don't know, NFL ready type of traditional.
I think it's the word being used. I mean, whatever you want to say.
My opinion, I want Caleb. That's just my opinion. I think if he ends up going to the Bears because they don't trade the pick or they ask for something that is so outrageous that I can't see Adam Peters paying up to do it, Fine. Then I'm not going to be upset with Jaden Daniels from what I've watched. I think we're in a very good spot here. But I also believe you go after the guy that you want to get. And they brought in Cliff Kingsbury, who worked directly with him. And if they are trying to make an active move to get up, it tells you everything you need to know. The guy who worked with him every day ought to know more about him than whatever's being said in the ecosystem about him. And when they brought in Kingsbury, I went, oh, here we go. Right? It's too on the nose. Right. So it's like, okay, here we go. All right. On the historic Hall part of this whole thing, I believe it and I don't believe it. Mm-hmm. One, if you love him and you think he's Pat Mahomes, why are you even thinking about trading the pick?
Right.
So they are preemptively, before the Super Bowl, telling everybody we're open for business. You got to wow us. It's the number one pick, and this guy seems like he's going to be a really good franchise quarterback. You got to wow us to get out of it. But if they think he's that, why are they even talking about it? So this is why, they're going to get offers.
Right.
They're asking for them. That reads to me like they are seriously considering staying with Justin Fields. They want to get the best value they can, and they don't think that he's that guy. And good for us if that's the case, because we're in the market for one of these. There's a lot of teams in the market for one of these things. But the whole quote-unquote historic haul, believe it when I see it. It will depend who it's from. If somebody in the 20s wants to try to move up to get him, yeah, it's going to take a ridiculous number to get up from there. But if it's the Vikings or the Raiders, who have not the best picks, but they're not way down in the draft order, what's that look like and what's it worth it to them? If it's the Patriots, who's picking what, third?
Yep, right.
What's that look like? And if it's us picking second, what does that really look like? So I think this is a lot of smoke. But it reads to me in hearing it that they're putting that out there and willing to say it. And they keep reiterating historic haul. It means they're totally open for business, which screams to me they are very, very, very seriously going to stick with Fields. And I don't blame them if they end up doing that. I think he's really good too. So, but if you think this guy's Mahomes, you're taking the pick and you're not taking anybody's calls. And so that's how I feel about in my read on this. It says to me they actually are more than willing to trade it, and they're going to take the best offer they can get for it. And let's see if Adam Peters can work some magic here, because we're going from 2-1. And I'll reiterate, that's the guy I want.
Right. I mean, what it reads to me is the Bears are at peace with both options. You're also seeing people say they get a historic haul, and all of a sudden they like Fields enough, clearly, to move forward with him. Maybe not as much as Caleb, but they like him enough that all of a sudden then you draft Marvin Harrison, or you draft the next wide receiver, and you surround Fields with so much talent, and cheap talent at that, because they're going to have all these first-round picks if they actually trade out of the spot, that you surround him with so much talent that he basically can't fail. I feel like that is what it's not a bad plan B, I think is what everyone
not at
is
all.
what they're talking about, is that we like Caleb, but we also really like Fields, and we don't mind surrounding him with even more talent, is pretty much what I've settled on.
Here's the other one, too. Okay, so there's a lot of smoke on Tomlin loves Fields. Mm-hmm. They'd be willing to upgrade here. Pittsburgh picks 20.
Yep.
I mean, if I'm Pittsburgh, do you give up the first pick? 20 for Justin Fields.
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
No.
I would.
I wouldn't. No, because here's the thing.
20?
You're trading a first-round pick, and then you have to pay him. This is the worst.
In 2 years.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying you still have to pay him. I mean.
In 2 years. And are you really, at 20, are you going to do better than Justin Fields? And if you're saying you need a quarterback, which I think they do,
right,
and he's available to them, well.
Right.
So that's where I'd go with that. You're really that interested? We want your first-round pick, not a second-round pick. At Pittsburgh at 20, I'd have to seriously consider that. If I think I've got my answer in a franchise quarterback at 20, even though I do have to pay him in a couple of years, 2 years, I think I'm doing that if I'm Pittsburgh. And you can make fun of me all you want for saying I overpaid, but what am I getting at 20? It's not Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. It's not Drake May. Mm-hmm. You'd have to pay more to go from 20 to get one of those guys.
Right. No, that's true.
You wouldn't just you'd have to give up 3 first-round picks to go get one of those guys.
Right.
If you could just give up 20 to get Fields, I think I'm doing that. So if that's happening, then I think the Bears can sit there and go, great, we're taking Caleb Williams. Or Jaden Daniels, who knows? Maybe we'll see how they figure it out. Right. My guess is it will be Caleb Williams. But I don't know that I believe Chicago here. And it's just, by putting this out so early, it just totally screams to me we are beyond open for business here, which reads to me that they would seriously consider keeping Fields.
Well, it's also they're doing this early because they're waiting for a dumb franchise like Carolina. Carolina's not going to do it, but they're waiting for one of those franchises to step up and say, here's 5 first-round picks. And the Bears going, great, we know you're actually not going to be successful no matter who you pick, and so we'll happily take those 5 first-round picks or whatever the haul would end up being.
You know, the amazing part is we all think that whoever trades with Chicago would want Caleb Williams. Well, the most amazing outcome would be is if someone jumped us and took Jaden Daniels.
Right.
Because if that happened, because they're not getting them either way, 1, 2, or 3, so you have to jump up. If that's what ends up happening, oh man, if we hit the jackpot. Because we're sitting at number 2, probably getting the guy we want anyway. Right. Don't have to give up literally anything for it. That would be amazing, but you'd have to know what the situation is. So now you have to ask this question. Since they're clearly open for business, how far will you go?
Right.
Because I believe them, they want to haul. They're not giving it away, even just to go down to 2. And at that point, I've heard some people say, well, if they didn't want Caleb Williams, they'd probably trade out of 2 as well, and they could stockpile a massive amount of picks, right?
Right.
Could do that. They could do it twice, or they could take Marvin Harrison Jr., call it a day.
Right.
You know, you got an extra pick out of the whole thing, you know, or extra 2 picks, whatever it may be. They've got a lot of really good choices here. So now the question is, all right, let's take them at face value. They are not closing the door. They're not saying we know we're taking Caleb Williams. It's a done deal. Don't even bother talking to us. We'll see you when we see you. What length do we go? That's the biggest question we need to ask. And if you are someone who's sitting here going, I'll take either one of them, I'm not of that mindset. I would be probably open to it, but I come from the place of I want my guy. Now, if my guy is not available, then I reassess at that point.
Sure.
But I would prefer to try to get the guy I believe is going to be the next whatever. And in my opinion, that's Caleb Williams. So that's where I am on the whole thing. I would rather try to do everything I can to get him. But the question will be, to what extent? Because when they say historic haul, they may get it from the Raiders at 13, right, as opposed to 2. Or they may get it from the Vikings at 11 as opposed to 2. Or the Falcons at 8 as opposed to 2. Or the Giants at 6, who knows, as opposed to 2. So therein lies the big problem here, is what does historic haul mean to those teams that have to make a bigger jump than we do comparative to what we have to do? And that's what we have to gauge and weigh, assuming Peters and company would like to get Williams. But the hiring of Kingsbury screams that they're going to take a very long, hard look at him.
Sure. No, I mean, duh. Of course they are, especially if you're literally hitting the reset button on the franchise. He's probably one of their top options. I'm of the belief that you don't trade up. The roster's too much in shambles right now. Like, unfortunately, they're in such a bad spot player personnel-wise. I don't think you can actually give up a bunch of assets to move up one spot. And I don't...
I want to know what a bunch is.
Okay. I mean,
that's what I want to.
Sure.
This is what, when you say historic haul to me,
right?
What do you mean by that? Because we're just moving up one spot, guys. Like you may get our next first round pick out of it,
right? And they're also going to turn around.
I think I'm doing that.
They're also going to turn around and go, you traded up from whatever the RG3 trade was. What were they, like 11 at that point? And they traded 3 first round picks in a second, I think, or something like. There's a 1 or 2 mid round picks in that trade too. They're going to go. Their argument back to you is going to go.
That worked out for neither of them.
Yeah, I know. It's the worst trade ever.
The Rams didn't end up doing anything with that.
Right. But what they're going to argue is, we don't care about the spot. You're getting the franchise quarterback. That's what I think the argument's going to be. It's like, we don't care about the spot. You're trading for a franchise quarterback just like everyone else is. So
the question Washington has to answer, do they believe that Caleb Williams is demonstrably better for sure than Jaden Daniels? That's what they have to ask them. Exactly. Or Drake May for that matter, but like really Jaden Daniels.
Sure.
And to me, I'm sold on I want to get him, but they may think differently about it, and there will be a price. I'm not paying literally anything. So when you stay historic haul, I'll hear you when I'm picking 13th like the Raiders. I'm not going to hear you when I'm picking 2nd. You're going to get your guy with us. Or you have the option to do it again.
Right.
You do. Right. Someone else may covet Daniels the way we covet Caleb, and they could do it again if they wanted to, and they could come out of this thing with a massive load of draft picks to build around Fields if that's what they decide to do. In the meantime, Kevin Warren, who's the team president of the Bears, did an interview with local media there, and he was asked about where they kind of are in all of this, and here was one clip from it.
We're in a very, very unique space and time in the Bears. I mean, you think the draft that Ryan made, last year to get DJ Moore and turn that pick into drafting Darnell Wright and then Stevenson, and to get those young guys a chance to play, and then trade for Montez, Sweat, and then not only trade for him but then extend him. And so if we can replicate, back-to-back years to really be smart about how we handle our draft capital this year, it could be a really special time for the Chicago Bears. You look at the 85 Bears, how many individuals in one draft, came out of that draft of all those starters. And so I'm very cognizant and conscientious that I need to be there to work hand in hand with Ryan, be supportive.
So listen closely there to what he said. If we can replicate what we did a year ago, saying out loud, we are more than willing to do what we did a year ago. Sure. Now, I think it's different than last year. Williams feels way more can't miss, and it may not work out that way, than Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud ever did at the time. I loved C.J. Stroud last year, but not the way I like him. I'm not surprised C.J. Stroud had a good year. I'm surprised how good a year it was, right?
Yeah.
I feel differently about Williams. I think you're walking into a different situation with him, and the Bears probably feel that way as well. But that's the team president outwardly saying, if we could replicate this, which is why I'm going back to them putting out this early, the historic Hall thing, I actually think they want to trade out of it. And him just outwardly saying, can we replicate what we did a year ago and get the type of capital to build out our roster? I think they're beyond open for business. Beyond. So this is clearly, he's for the taking. The question is, are we going to give a good enough deal to beat out the other 3, 4, 5 teams that are going to jump up and try to do it too?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what this all is they're trying to goad somebody into overpaying right now to essentially make the pick early.
I got a funny feeling that the Raiders or the Vikings are going to offer the type of deal they're talking about. That's what I think is going to happen. And then they're going to have to make their choice. Do we want 3 first-round picks from Minnesota and go to 11, or do we want 1 extra first-round pick and go to 2?
Right.
And get what looks to be a Hall of Fame caliber receiver?
Yeah, right. Or trade it down again, because that's been the joke with them is they could do 3 of these trades and all of a sudden have 10 draft picks over the next 2 years, 10 high draft picks over the next 2 years. Yeah.
Right. They could go down to 4 and watch the Patriots take a quarterback and still get Marvin Harrison.
Right.
They could do something like that. So this is interesting. But him saying it, this is why I'm watching them. I wonder if they're going to tip their hand on Fields anytime soon. If Pittsburgh really wants him and offers the number 20 overall pick and they turn that down, tells you everything you need to know.
Right.
Because everyone seems to think, they'll get a second-round pick. Well, what if Pittsburgh goes, we can't do better at 20 than Justin Fields. We need a quarterback. We'll give you 20.
Sure.
Well, if they turn that down, they'll turn down anything.
The Steelers don't tend to overpay for any of that
They
stuff,
don't typically.
So if they think it's a second-round pick, too.
But you overpay for quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It's what you do. We've listed out all of the different scenarios by which teams have done so through the years.
By your logic, though, and you're saying, you extend them in 2 years. What you are saying, though, is they would trade a first-round pick for a 2-year run with a guy that everyone still has questions of whether he's the guy or not. I
kind of don't myself. I actually think,
I don't think he's worth a top-tier contract, and that's the problem.
Not yet. But that's why you have 2 years with him.
Yeah.
That's why I agree. Well, you've got 2 years and then potentially a franchise tag. So you've got really 3 years of runway with him before. The third year he'll be making real money if you actually franchised him. But if he is what you thought he was, then you've got at least 3 years with him to figure it out.
Right.
That's the risk I would take if I'm them, especially now where you're dealing with Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
You don't really have a chance in that division if you do not get a top-tier quarterback. Are you going to do better than Justin Fields? And do you think there's a higher ceiling for him? I'm one of those people that thinks there is, personally. But that's their decision to make. If they're going to turn down that offer, even if it's perceived as an overpay, then the Bears are telling you everything you need to know. They are selecting Caleb Williams. So we kind of need that to heat up here a little bit.
Yeah.
If they're unwilling to move off of Fields, as we creep closer to the draft, then it's obvious what they're doing. They are open for business, and let's just see how far we're willing to go to make it happen. All right, one more quick thing I just want to play real quick. It's just one person's opinion. But Merrill Hodge has famously been right about top-tier picks in the past.
Yep.
And this was he was on, I don't even remember what show it was, but during Radio Row, he was on a lot of different shows.
NBC Sports Chicago.
Okay, so he was asked about Caleb Williams, and this was his opinion on him.
I've only watched Caleb Williams 3 games last year, 3 this year, so I'm only halfway done, okay? The one thing that is clear, he is not special. He is not something unique like a Patrick Mahomes, and I hope the Bears don't think, well, let's try to make up for our mistake when we pass up Patrick Mahomes and go get the Patrick Mahomes. The kid is not Patrick Mahomes. Ain't even remotely close to that. So it is unfair to Justin Fields. He has had new coordinator. There's no possible way you can know about your guy when you do that. It's the worst thing that can happen to any player, especially a quarterback. Now, when Justin came out, the one thing that I thought he had just inexperience. He just needed more experience. He lacked that. But what I have seen in Justin Fields, from my evaluation, there's enough growth and hope there that I would not let him go because I see enough there.
So the biggest takeaway, forget should you just stick with them? Okay, you should.
Yep.
And to Merrill's point, they changed offensive coordinators again.
Yeah.
Right. So that happened again.
Yeah.
Right. But his point is, I don't think Caleb Williams is Patrick Mahomes. That's what everyone says he is. And I think it's unfair to characterize anybody as Patrick Mahomes at this point. Right. He might be the greatest quarterback I've ever seen.
Yep.
And the results speak for themselves. But in my opinion, he's special. And this is where I think you make the move to do something like this. I hope the Bears want to keep Fields. They are open for business. We're a prime candidate to trade up, and I think we're going to do everything in our power to try to do that, and hopefully it works out, and hopefully Minnesota doesn't give them 10 first-round picks.
I have yet to say it on this show, but I don't want him. So
why?
I don't like the off-the-field stuff with him.
What do you mean?
It all worries me. He criticized USC fans. He got really emotional. At some point in the season, they were losing, and he goes, "I've never done this before." I'm getting PTSD from all the failed quarterbacks here that have almost said the similar things when they were playing here. And maybe I'm overreacting to it all, but all I'm saying is that I'd rather just take whoever's there at 2. If they take Caleb at 2, fine. I'm fine with that. I'm not trading up for him and giving up more assets from my roster to get him, though. If he's their guy, he's their guy. That's
I want to know what the price is, because
Sure.
it's not anything to me.
Yeah, right, of course.
But if the price is reasonable to go from 2 to 1, I want him, and all of that stuff while I'm taking into account and watching closely. Right. I'm going to go with I'm willing to take a pass on some of the things that he has said and assume that, like, in a good professional environment, it might be different. Sure. I agree it's a red flag, and I want to keep an eye on it. But his play is his play.
Right.
And his play is unquestionably great, with the exception of literally one game. And he does some things that are, I don't think you coach, they're natural. And that's where it stands out to me. Like Jaden Daniels has Fields. He's a lot like Fields.
Yeah,
he's like
right.
fast, crazy athlete, really very accurate too. He's a great prospect. And if that's where we end up, I'm going to be very excited about it. But Williams does things that are very unusual.
Sure.
He's got a feel for it that I don't think you can teach or coach. And in this day and age, in unscheduled play and players doing things like Mahomes does, he seems to have that no one else does, and therefore why I want him. And him complaining here or there or crying in a press conference or his dad saying we want to own a team, I'm going to put that into the ether and go, that's not your best trait, but the ones that matter to me are the ones that I see on the field, and I don't think anybody else can do that, and that's why I want him here.
The two other things that I'll just push back on is, one, he was on USC, which means there's studs all over the place, right?
Yes, their defense was terrible.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. Yes. They were losing week in and week out.
They were scoring 40-plus points and losing.
Yeah, for sure.
So it wasn't him.
Right, but I'm just saying, for an elite quarterback prospect that is also surrounded by 5-star recruits, essentially, and he was putting up some of the numbers that he was, I would expect a little bit more out of him. The other thing is the Patrick Mahomes comparison is Mahomes playing at Texas Tech. Not saying Texas Tech was nothing, but they were not on the map that year of having this can't-miss quarterback. You know, he was picked at, 10-11 with Kansas City, something like that.
They moved up to get him, but he was the third or fourth quarterback selected that year.
Right, exactly. So I'm just pushing back on that. The other one is, same thing. I get PTSD from drafting athletes that are from this area. You know, Chase Young was the can't-miss edge rusher from here. Couldn't have been more of a slam dunk, and it just didn't. And you always wonder when guys move back to where they're from, what happens to their mindset, their psyche? Are they handed everything when they step out? Like, sometimes it just doesn't work at home either. Once again, I'm just saying.
Hey, Joe Burrow's been an MVP
course.
caliber player. He's from that region of the country.
Of course, 100%. I also think Joe Burrow is just completely built different. I mean, like from a mental standpoint too.
Maybe.
Like that dude, I don't think could do no wrong. Remember, he was not the can't miss prospect until the last month of that season, essentially. So.
Yes, the returns on Caleb so far is he doesn't like losing.
Right.
And that's not good.
No, of course. Yeah.
That's not good because
Right.
we've done a lot of that lately.
Right. And so that's
I'd like to think optimistically we'll be better than we've been, but are we going to be a Super Bowl team next year, even if we draft him? Show me the roster.
Right.
You know,
yeah, of course.
Like,
Yes, absolutely. I'm with you on that. I know it's going to take a little bit more of a, you're going to need a little more mental fortitude to last year the first couple years while we go through this thing. And it worries me that he's not that guy. That's all. That's all. And that's, as
we
I
got
said,
a lot of cap room, and Justin Jefferson wants to break the bank, so feel a little different. We bring both of them in.
Of course, but they're not going to let him go for nothing is the thing. Yeah. Modern NFL, he's not going to walk away from them for nothing. So.
No, he's not.
Yeah.
No, he is not.